Hi, and welcome to another episode of Legacy Talks. And today we're going to be talking about marriage. And it's funny because we're talking about marriage when it's Valentine's Day. So this is when people start getting gifts for their wives or for their husbands, mainly for their wives. We don't hear a lot of stuff about husbands that much, about getting your husband a gift and go all big on it.
Yeah, your mom's always been good about getting me a gift, though. She gets me something. I think society or the retailers gear it towards the husband getting the wife or the boyfriend getting the girlfriend something.
Yeah.
But no, your mom's always been good about getting me a gift on Valentine's Day.
So if you're listening to this and you're going out and getting your wife something, then good for you. At least you're getting your wife something for Valentine's Day.
Or if you're listening to this and you forgot, go get something.
Go get it before she's like, you know what today is, right?
Right. Go get it while you can.
Yeah.
So marriage is different than what people maybe expect. A lot of people, I think, step into marriage with excitement, but very little preparation. And that's why even like as a pastor, I kind of changed several years ago, maybe 5 to 6 years ago. I really became diligent, Bradley, that I would not marry somebody without providing premarital counseling. I just made it my, if you want me to do your wedding, then there's going to be counseling involved. I'm going to do, and I have 6 sessions that I do.
Yeah.
And because I feel like, it's the most important decision you make in life, besides giving your life to God. It's the most important decision you make in your life. And sometimes many people run into it excited but not prepared. They haven't had any thought of how to make a relationship last, how to make this thing that you're doing. The ceremony takes 20 to 30 minutes, but it's a lifelong commitment.
Oh, yeah.
And I just began to notice people were planning the reception. They were planning they got to have this meal and the caterer, and they got to have this DJ, and they got to do this, and they're planning the flowers, and they're planning all this stuff for a 30-minute event. And the ceremony is 30 minutes. The reception is an hour and a half, whatever. But the relationship is lifelong, and there was no preparation. And so I felt like as a pastor, I needed to make sure that when I'm marrying somebody, that they go into it prepared, because marriage is harder than what people expect.
Yeah. It exposes a lot of stuff because, you were dating that person or engaged to that person for this many years and they never showed you some stuff that you'll see in marriage, like maybe arguing or how much times they like to drink coffee or do this or do something that you never saw behind them.
Right. I think that marriage exposes weaknesses within ourselves even. We, excuse me, we say not to pray for patience. We joke and say don't pray for patience because patience comes through trials. The trying of your faith worketh patience. And so if you pray for patience, you're going to have lots of opportunities where you need to show patience. And I just told somebody earlier today, I said, the marriage relationship is one of the biggest ways that we will grow in the fruit of the Spirit, because the marriage relationship exposes your selfishness. Mm-hmm. It exposes your communication skills or lack thereof. Mm-hmm. It will expose any emotional wounds that haven't been healed or you didn't even know were there. Marriage is that relationship that is going to give you opportunity to need to be patient, need to be kind, need to be long-suffering, need to be gentle, need to show goodness, right? Need to all of those things. And so the marriage relationship is the number one relationship in your life, and it should be given top priority and the most effort. But it does reveal things about you that no other relationship will reveal. And so marriage is just important. And there are things about yourself and, like you said, about your spouse that you will not know until you get married. We did we're a little bit behind schedule when this posts, but a couple weeks ago, your mom and I did a Q&A during church where we talked about marriage and family and things like that. And one of the questions to open said, what was one thing that you found out in marriage that you didn't know, right?
Yeah.
And I joked and said that I didn't know that I was folding towels wrong my whole life.
I remember that because I would help fold towels, and Mom's like, "No, you have to do it this way." I'm like, "What?"
Right.
Because I was never taught until Mom taught me. I'm like, and then my wife tells me I'm doing it wrong. I'm like, I was taught by my mom how to do this.
Right.
This is how you fold towels.
So, but marriage can expose a lot of things.
It can. You can't hide the things that you did back then because you're married to that person. So if you played video games until like midnight, you can't hide it from your wife because you're playing and she's gonna be like, are you going to bed? Oh no, I'll play until midnight and I'll be in bed.
Yeah, nobody can put on a show for 24, for forever.
Yeah.
Anybody can be good for a while, but your flaws are going to show eventually when you get married.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be uncomfortable because exposure reveals the real you. It reveals the you that you hope nobody else sees.
Yeah.
And that you just can't hide in a marriage. But that exposure isn't meant to destroy your marriage or destroy your relationship, but it's meant to refine it, and it's meant to heal you and make you better and stronger. Marriage is not two perfect people getting together and living in bliss for the rest of their life. Marriage is two imperfect people choosing to build a life together.
Yeah. And it's a learning process of building that life because it's something different. You move out of your parents' house and get married, it's something completely different. You have to build your own thing. You can't copy what your parents did. Sometimes you have to go through the stuff that you guys go through and build it up together because you're not going to go through what your parents went through.
Right. The Bible says forsaking father and mother. And there are things from our parents, no matter how great your parents were, and you had great parents, by the way. No matter how great your parents were, there are some things in their marriage that you need to forsake because this isn't your parents' marriage. This is your marriage, right? But marriage is two people that are willing to learn. You made a great statement when you said it's a learning process, and that's what it is. Marriage is a learning process. I am not the husband today that I was 25 and a half years ago. I've learned. I've made some mistakes. We've cried some tears. We've grown. And so marriage is not about being perfect. It's about learning. It's about growing.
And it's about, when you mean growing, it's like you have to listen. You have to be willing to listen to your wife. Because if you don't, you're not going to have the nice tone on the second time if you don't listen,
You sound like you're talking from experience.
If you're like, huh, the second time? They're like, what, you didn't hear it the second time? No, I was zoned out.
Right.
Always be willing to listen.
Be willing to listen.
Be willing to change and
be willing to own your own part in the marriage and being willing to say, hey, that one was on me. I could have done that. And I have found in a marriage that it's, I do marriage counseling for several couples and it's never one person's fault. It takes two to make a marriage. It takes two to build a marriage, but it also takes two to hurt the marriage. I've never found yet where one person is 100% at fault when they're struggling in their marriage relationship. It's usually both people are involved. Now, maybe there's one that carries a greater responsibility than the other one, but there's just never been a time yet where someone went into it and said, and we were able to say as a group in counseling that they were completely exonerated and they had no fault in it. And so we have to be willing to own our part of the relationship. We can't cast all the blame on our spouse.
Yeah.
And a lot of marriage problems, a lot of marriage conflicts come from expectations, unrealistic expectations.
Yes. It's like the unspoken ones where it's like, like we were talking like last week about how Hollywood and all these movie stuff, whatever, love, all that. They try to show what marriage should look like and what this and that, but it's not really that. That's the expectation that they give us in movies, but it's not what reality is. It's not a perfect marriage. It's going to be a marriage where you're going to argue or you're going to fight, but you stick it out.
Right. Well, and you said unspoken ones, and that goes into what we'll talk about in a few minutes. But your spouse cannot be held accountable for something you didn't communicate to them.
Yeah.
They're not mind readers. They're not fortune tellers. And so if you had this certain expectation or this hope, but you never communicated it to your spouse, how are they supposed to know that? You cannot be passive aggressive. You cannot drop hints. You cannot hope that they figure out why you're upset. Maybe you're mad, you're giving them the silent treatment, you're doing this or that, and you're hoping that they'll get the hint. No, especially with guys, we don't get hints. You got to tell us. If you're upset, just tell us, right? Just tell us.
Yeah.
But we have to communicate our expectations, and you mentioned it. Sometimes there are expectations that are communicated to us through the years, and it can be from the Disney movies that we watched as kids. It can be through the fairy tales that were read to us by our parents. It can be through the romantic comedies that we've watched. All these things that culture puts in us, social media puts in us, and you cannot judge life by social media because most people are presenting their best image. They're putting their best foot forward and they're showing you what they want you to see. Now, there are some people that are drama and they just, they show you all their stuff, but most people are showing you the highlights of their life. And so you can look and think that somebody has the best marriage and the best relationship and they never fight and they never have any issues. And so then that presents to you that there's something wrong with your marriage if it doesn't look like theirs. Well, theirs looks like that too, but they're not showing. And so unrealistic, unspoken expectations. But communication is very key.
Yep. And it's like what people don't always say, it's what you expect. And it's when you think about that, it's like you said, people don't show the fighting. They think, oh, you're having it as a good life because you're not fighting with your spouse. Well, that doesn't always mean you're fighting with them. It's just you're hiding it because you don't have to fight in public to show your marriage phone or your, you have to. It's better to do it when you're together, but not in public because then you're embarrass them.
Well, yeah, you never want to air your business, online or to other people. One of the things that I teach people in premarital counseling is how to fight like a Christian, how to resolve conflict, right? And one of the things that we tell people is don't be a Benedict Arnold. Don't announce your problems to the world, right? If you're having a problem with your spouse, don't put it on social media. If you're having a problem with your spouse, don't tell your mom and dad or your brother or your sister or your best friends or your work, buddies, because those people, try as they may, are not going to be fair and balanced, and they are not going to love your spouse the way that you love your spouse. And so when your conflict gets resolved, they're still remembering it.
Oh, yeah.
And so, no, you do not want to go put your problems on blast. You want to talk to the person you're supposed to be talking to, and that is your spouse. If you can't figure it out and you need help, then go find a trusted counselor or pastor that can remain neutral and that has a little bit of training in how to help you. And there are therapists out there, there are pastors out there, there are Christian counselors. But go find somebody that can be, objective, fair, balanced, and maybe help guide you through it. But no, but that was good about conflict and not talking to everybody else except your spouse. Talk to your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
But we were in that vein of expectations, and people many times don't say what they expect, and then they get upset when those expectations aren't met. And anger is the result of unmet needs. Anger is the result of unmet needs. And when that need isn't met, we then experience the emotion of anger. And there's nothing wrong with the emotion of anger. Anger is an indicator that something is wrong, that we need to address the situation. We need to figure out what's going on. Many times these unmet needs are traced back to our childhood or our early life, and they never got resolved. And so then they show up in our marriage relationship, right? And so then we're upset at our spouse for, not doing the dishes. And we think it's over not doing the dishes, but really it goes back to an unmet need that was in our childhood.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes we got to ask ourselves, why are we getting so angry over things? Is it really the situation, or is it a previous hurt that we had? Because when anger isn't dealt with, and when expectations are continuously not met, it does build up anger. And then anger turns into disappointment, and disappointment turns into resentment. And then we're just not happy.
Oh, no.
Right. And then it's beyond just your having a little argument or having a little discussion. Now it's you've got deep-seated emotions that need to get taken care of. And this is where communication is key. Healthy marriages communicate. You've got to talk to each other. You've got to have those hard conversations.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like it's obvious because and if you go through marriage counseling, you tell them communication is always key in the marriage.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if they come to you and say, well, like let's say they get married and they come back and they're like, well, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. And you probably ask them, well, have you communicated to each other about this? Have you talked about this before? And they probably have said, no, we haven't communicated about it. Then you probably tell them, go back and communicate. Learn to communicate first and then come back to me and
learn to communicate. That's key, because as a society, I believe we are losing the art of communication.
Well, it's because of our phones. People text now. It's kind of scary because the way that people are communicating is through text, not to person.
Through text, through social media, yeah.
They're losing that connection.
I've seen two people in the same room,
and they text,
and they'll text each other instead of talking to each other. And so communication isn't just talking; it's learning how to listen.
Yes.
Learning how to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And listening is not just listening so that you're forming an argument in your head of something you want to say back.
Yeah, no.
See, that's the thing too. Sometimes people can be listening to somebody, but they're not listening to understand. They're listening. And while they're listening, they're already planning what they're going to say next.
And you shouldn't plan to say what next, because you might just blow the next button on your spouse on that.
Right.
And you don't want to do that. You're going to make it more worse. And then you're just having this huge more fight that you're going not solved.
Right. And that's one of the things I teach in premarital counseling as well, is communication, because I believe communication is key to healthy marriages. And there are things that we need to learn in communication, like assertive communication, how to humbly and gently say what you need, how to confront issues without casting blame or insulting, and, saying I feel statements, instead of saying, you frustrate me when you don't clean out your empty coffee cup in the morning, right? Instead, say, I feel like you are taking advantage of me when you don't clean out your coffee cup in the morning. So you're starting with I feel,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is what I feel when you. And so you're starting with that I statement. You're owning this is my feeling. This is the behavior, right? You're not saying you're lazy, you're sloppy, you're not attacking the person. You're saying I feel taken advantage of when I've already done all the dishes and I'm getting ready to walk out the door and go to work. And I come home and find your coffee cup in the sink. It was one dish. You could have washed it and put it away, right? So you're starting with those I feels. You're naming one behavior. You're not attacking the person. Many times we resort to attacking somebody or insulting them or calling them a name or using statements like you never clean your coffee cup or you never do the dishes or you never, you're going to extremes. And sometimes it's just because we're trying to win the argument. We're trying to prove our point. And so communication is a big thing. And this episode isn't about communication, but it could be. But what we need to understand is that marriage requires humility.
Yep.
It requires us to communicate, to listen, to own our part, to understand that even if we don't like what our spouse is telling us in the communication process, that it could be true.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe we need to self-reflect and say, you know what, I didn't like what you had to say, but what you had to say was true, and I need to own it, and I need to grow. But that's never going to happen if you don't have humility in the marriage.
And so it's almost like conflict also, because you have conflict that will come into communication. And
it never fails when you try to have a conversation. Somehow, especially because we're not good at communication.
Oh yeah,
conflict is going to arise, and conflict is normal. Conflict is not a sign that your marriage is failing.
Yeah, it's not a sign. It's more like when you think about it. Yes, it's bad to have conflict, but I think every marriage should kind of have a conflict because that's how you will grow. Because if you don't have conflict, your marriage isn't going to grow. It's going to not get strong enough. Because when you think about it, after you have that conflict that happened and you guys are past that, you get stronger from it because you're like, now we know next time we won't do this. We won't start this fight again because we know what we did wrong in that conflict.
Well, when someone tells me that they don't have conflict in their marriage or they never argue with their spouse, there are two things that I know about that person. One, I either know they're a liar because two people do not live in a house together 24/7 for year after year, week after week, month after month, and never have a disagreement, never have a conflict, right?
Yeah.
So I either know you're a liar and I can't trust anything else you're saying, or I know that you are completely oblivious
about it.
And you have no idea the dissatisfaction that is in your marriage and that your spouse is experiencing. If you think, you honestly think, if you're not lying and you honestly think that you have no conflict in your marriage or in your relationship ever, then that tells me you're oblivious and you are not plugged in. You are checked out of the relationship because you're not noticing the signals that your spouse is sending you. Conflict is normal and it's not a sign that the marriage is failing. But what's worse is avoiding the conflict. Trying to avoid it creates distance. Healthy couples face conflict with honesty and humility and respect.
And having conflict and you guys fighting does not mean that that person that you're fighting with does not love you. It's more that they love you. It's just they're trying to help you out from not being mad. Because it's like this, we see it on Facebook and we see it in reality. When one person starts yelling at another and they start getting to get frustrated about it, the other person starts getting mad and get frustrated. And they start going back and forth, start yelling and getting mad. It's like that in a marriage because it's like when one spouse is getting mad and frustrated and starts yelling, the other one has to start, like they think they have to start yelling and all that, get into it. But they still love you. It's just you started first a little bit to arouse your spouse up. And it's like, you shouldn't do that.
Well, and it's not, conflict isn't about winning.
It's not, because it's about you're trying to get your perspective.
Right. It's about resolution. It's about
Mhm.
trying to resolve the problem. And if you go into an argument with your spouse trying to win, you've lost already.
Yeah.
You've lost already. Remember, you're both supposed to be on the same team.
Yeah.
So in order for there to be a win, there needs to be a resolution. There needs to be a resolving of the conflict. And marriage works best. You said it a minute ago, that they still love you when they're arguing. Marriage works best when commitment is resolved. Like
Mhm.
your mom and I had a rule that we do not say the word divorce ever. We just don't say the word. Divorce is not an option. And so the commitment is settled. We might have a hard day, we might have a hard week, we might have some arguments, we might have some disappointments, some conflict, but one thing we know is that divorce is not an option. And so what that means is we've got to resolve the conflict because it's the only way forward.
Mhm.
There's no way forward for me without my wife, right? We're together for life. And so we have established a long time ago that even if we're having a conflict, even if we're having an argument, love is not in the question. We're not, whether I love your mom or whether your mom loves me is not up for debate. That's settled. We love each other.
Yeah.
Staying is the default setting in our marriage, right?
Mhm.
There is no exit other than death. There is no exit. So staying is the default setting. We pre-programmed our settings that we're staying. And so when that commitment is strong, when that commitment is settled, then conflict becomes something you can work through, not something you run from.
Yeah. It creates security when you know that your loved one that you just fought is still wanting to be with you. It gives you that security of like, okay, I know they're not going to leave me from what we just had. They're still going to love me. They're still going to go to bed in the same bed. They're not going to go sleep on the couch or sleep in the doghouse.
Right, right.
But it helps you to know, okay, this marriage is secure. I can trust them to not leave, even though if it goes hard.
Yeah, and it gives you the safety to communicate freely. Another thing in marriage is forgiveness. Forgiveness is essential. And forgiveness is not about ignoring the hurt, not about sweeping things under the rug, but it's naming the hurt and talking about it and choosing to forgive it. Forgiveness says that I will not be defined by hurt. This relationship will not be defined by hurt. And so forgiveness is what gives us the ability and the strength to keep loving our spouse. And forgiveness says, yes, there's been a conflict. Yes, there's been a disagreement or an argument, but it will not define our relationship.
And grace, keeps us from getting bitter and when you think about it, when you have grace, you use that grace from God because God gives you grace too.
Right. And just remembering that we're two broken people or two imperfect people that are healing and growing. And so just give your spouse a little bit of understanding.
And like if you think about it, if you look at Adam and Eve, they were the first people that were showing marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And they threw out the blame game and all that. And that's what most people want to do.
Yeah. And it's not, again, it's not about keeping score.
Nope.
It's not about who's right, who's wrong, who's got more check marks by their name. Marriage is not a scoreboard. When you're focused on keeping score and who's been right the most or who caused the last argument and who caused this one, intimacy begins to suffer. Marriage is a partnership. And so when marriage is a partnership and both people, again, own their part in the relationship, that's when love grows. And marriage is important because it's the bedrock of the family. Marriage doesn't just affect the couple, it affects the children, it affects the family. Children learn emotional security by watching their parents work through conflict. Children learn safety and security when they learn that arguments and disagreements and hurts and disappointments do not equal end of relationship. When children see parents work through things and still love each other, it teaches the children that even if I disappoint my parents, they're still going to love me.
Mm-hmm.
But if children see mom and dad get disappointed in each other and stop loving each other, it creates this expectation in children that maybe they'll stop loving me.
Yeah.
And so it's important that our marriage models safety and love and commitment, because then our children become safe individuals and they have a strong sense of belonging, and they understand that even in the hard times, family sticks it out. And so marriage, how we treat each other as husband and wife, sets the tone for the whole house.
And it's like I said, it sets a tone for the house. So when you walk into that house, you should feel like a safe place, but also feel like they love each other and they don't hate each other. So it's like they know what they're doing in that marriage.
Absolutely.
To keep it healthy.
And every marriage goes through seasons that feel dry. And it's important that we don't give up in the dry seasons.
Mm-mm. It's that's when people start being broken a little bit, because they feel like there's nothing in the dry season. It's like what God said, you may have dry seasons, but you have to stay with it, because there's going to be those dry seasons that you may not feel God, but you're going to feel it soon. Like Israel had no prophets for so many years until Jesus came.
Mm-hmm.
You could say that was a dry season.
Yeah, they had 400 years of prophecy. Yeah,
you had to stay it out through that dry season.
Well, if you want to talk about Israel, I think about Ezekiel when the Lord took him to the valley of dry bones. And the Lord said to Ezekiel, "Can these bones live?" And Ezekiel said, "Lord, only you know." But to bring life back into those bones,
Mm-hmm.
God told Ezekiel, "Speak to the bones." He didn't say, "Pray to me." He said, "Speak to the bones." If your marriage is going through a dry season, yes, you need to pray, but the answer is you need to speak to your spouse.
Yeah.
You need to speak into the relationship. Don't give up in the dry seasons. Every marriage has seasons that are dry, but that doesn't mean it's broken. It means you're human. It means you're normal. And dry seasons come because we get busy, we get
Mm-hmm.
distracted, we have obligations that are causing us to give attention to it. And we can go through seasons where we're not protecting our alone time, our date nights, our boundaries, and we're being pulled in all different directions. And sometimes work, children, church, all of these things require our attention and our efforts. And then by the time we get home and it's 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and we're just now seeing our spouse for the first time, we have no more energy. And you go through that for a week or two, and you can go into a dry season. But if we will follow the example of Ezekiel and the dry bones,
mm-hmm.
Speak to it. Speak to it. Tell your spouse, "We've been really busy lately. I haven't even had the chance to sit down and just appreciate you and talk
mm-hmm.
to you and tell you that I love you." Begin to speak to those dry bones. And if you will, it can live. And so marriage is worth it, with all the challenges, with all the opportunities for conflict, with all of the dry seasons that can happen, with all the potholes that we can run into, all the things that can surprise you. Marriage is worth it. Marriage takes effort and it takes work, and it's not easy, but it's worth it. And if I could just say this, in just a couple of months, we'll be married 26 years. And marriage is not 50-50.
It's not.
Marriage is 100, 100. Marriage is you giving 100% and your spouse giving 100%. Sometimes it's going to be 80, 20. Maybe you're giving 80 and your spouse is giving 20. But on the whole, marriage is 100, 100. And it's two people that have chosen to stick it out together, regardless of what life brings, regardless of the situations. Marriage is two people saying, I'm here to stay.
Yep.
It might get hard. We might have dry seasons. We might have some conflict, but I'm here to stay. And marriage is worth it because marriage isn't just about two people falling in love. Marriage builds generations. Marriage builds legacies. We call this legacy talks because hopefully somewhere along the line, it's me passing some wisdom on to you. You've said some really great things. You've brought out things that we didn't discuss, things that weren't in our notes.
No.
And you know what that tells me? That tells me that somewhere you've picked up some things, maybe from me, maybe from other people, maybe from your grandparents. I don't know, but you've picked up some things. And that's the point of these podcasts is one generation speaking to the other.
Yeah.
And that's what marriage does. Marriage builds generations. Marriage builds legacy. And so it's important for us to have healthy marriages so that we can build lasting legacies. And so today, as we get ready to wrap this up, if someone is listening and you want to strengthen your marriage, the first thing
that you want to do is listen to your spouse of what they're saying, what they're wanting you to do, and then communication.
Which listening is key to communication.
Because if you cannot communicate, then you're not listening to your spouse because you don't know what they're asking you.
Right. And you want to own your part.
Yeah.
You want to own your part.
And then you want to forgive quickly. If you don't forgive your spouse at all or ask for forgiveness, then it's not going to go as well.
Right. And never stop trying. Keep working on it. Keep working on it.
You may keep on asking for forgiveness, or you may keep on forgiving your spouse, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be, it doesn't mean that they're going to stop doing it. Like they'll learn. They may not do the same thing over and over, or argue about the same thing. It's just going to be a consistent, you have to forgive. And because there's no limit of stop forgiving.
Right, right. And I think it's important that we say, and it's sad that we have to say this, but again, we're not talking about situations where somebody's being physically abused.
Yeah.
We're not talking about situations where you're in danger, where you're being abused in any way. We're not talking about those kinds of situations. In those situations, you need to seek safety, seek counsel, and protect yourself. But we are talking about the normal, everyday problems that marriages encounter.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to be real, because if people think that your marriage is never going to have a conflict, your marriage is never going to have a bad day, then you do begin to think, oh, we're broken. Oh, we're not going to make it. No, we need to understand that even healthy marriages have hard days, but the hard days give way to the good days, and marriage is worth it. Marriage is wonderful. I've had almost 26 of the best years of my life with your mother. Has there been a few rough days? There's been a few rough days, but the years have been wonderful.
Yep.
The years have been wonderful. So thank you for joining us today with Legacy Talks. And I hope that Bradley and I's conversation has been a blessing to you.
Yep. And I hope we all see you next week on the next podcast.
All right. Have a good day.
Yep. Bye.